Welcome to Missing in Ohio, a podcast devoted to telling the stories of Ohio's missing loved ones. I am your host, Kelly Bruce, and this is Chapter 11, The Disappearance of Tyler Davis. Tyler Davis is a missing adult from Columbus, Ohio. Tyler was last seen on February 24, 2019 in the Easton area. He is 29 years old and 5 foot 9 inches tall and 195 pounds. Tyler is a white male with brown hair and brown eyes. He was last seen wearing a green and blue flannel, a white t-shirt, denim jeans, and Nike shoes. If you have any information on the disappearance of Tyler Davis, please call the Columbus Police Department at 614-645-4624. Missing in Ohio typically doesn't cover a disappearance as recent as Tyler Davis, but all of us at the podcast have been following and investigating Tyler's disappearance almost since the beginning. Through our investigations, we have been able to form a relationship with Brittany Davis, the wife of Tyler Davis. Brittany is a very sweet and strong young lady that has been through hell and back with Tyler's disappearance, yet she still does everything in her power to keep her husband's name out there and to raise awareness. Throughout this episode, we will only use the first names of everyone we mention with the exception of Tyler and Brittany. Brittany and Tyler are a young married couple that began their family 2 years ago with the birth of their son. And up until February 24, 2019, they were an average family living their lives in Wilmington, Ohio. As you can imagine, as a young working couple with a toddler, alone time was a foreign concept. That is why Tyler and Brittany were so excited for their upcoming getaway to celebrate Brittany's 23rd birthday. In order for Tyler to take the weekend off to go away, he had to work a lot of long shifts that week, even working several 12-hour shifts the days leading up to their trip to Easton in Columbus, Ohio. As you can imagine, Tyler was exhausted leading up to his disappearance. So exhausted, in fact, that Brittany, Tyler, and their son overslept and were late meeting Tyler's parents. Tyler's parents live in Circleville, Ohio. They were all meeting for lunch on Stringtown Road in Grove City, Ohio. Then Tyler's parents would be keeping their young grandson overnight so Tyler and Brittany could have a much-needed celebration of her birthday. The next portion of the show is going to be a timeline of February 23rd and 24th and how Brittany and Tyler spent their time celebrating her birthday. A lot of the times have been taken directly from receipts, phone records, and bank records. After meeting Tyler's parents for lunch, they headed to the Hilton Hotel Easton in Columbus, Ohio. Tyler Davis and his wife Brittany arrived at the Hilton Hotel Easton and checked in on February 23, 2019 at 4:58 p.m. Since they woke up late, they both showered and got ready for the evening at the hotel. Brittany and Tyler relaxed in the room for several hours and waited the arrival of their friends. Both Tyler and Brittany invited friends to come celebrate Brittany's birthday. However, when the time rolled around to go out, only Tyler's friend Sean showed up to go out with them. At approximately 8:30 p.m., Tyler, Brittany, and Sean left the Hilton Hotel and began walking around Easton Town Center and did so for 30 to 40 minutes. Between 9 and 9:30 p.m., the three of them arrived at Bar Louie. They got a table and sat down for what would be the first time Brittany and Tyler would have drinks in a bar together. At 10:19 p.m., Brittany, Tyler, and Sean paid their tabs at Bar Louie and made their way to Adobe Gila's. At both bars, the friends had a few drinks each. At 11:30 p.m., they paid their tabs at Adobe Gila's and made their way back to the Hilton Hotel. At approximately 12 a.m., and now it would be February 24th and Brittany's birthday, Tyler and Brittany Davis, along with their friend Sean, arrived back at the Hilton Hotel Easton in Columbus, Ohio. Even though they were back at the hotel, they were not there to stay. A tipsy Brittany, not wanting the celebration to end, suggested to Tyler and Sean they should continue their fun by going to a strip club. Brittany had never been to a strip club, so she was curious as to what it would be like. While at the hotel, Brittany and Tyler used the restroom in their room, and Tyler withdrew money at the hotel ATM. Brittany, Tyler, and Sean then got an Uber and made their way to the Dollhouse. The Dollhouse is a Columbus area strip club. They arrived at the Dollhouse at approximately 12:40 a.m. While at the strip club, the three of them had several drinks and speak to a few people. At close to closing time, Brittany goes to the restroom. While Brittany was in the restroom, the bar staff began corralling the patrons towards the exit. When the staff told Tyler to leave, he explained he was waiting on his wife who was in the restroom. The staff member didn't care what Tyler was saying and continued to edge them towards the exit. At this time, Brittany comes out of the restroom to find all the lights now on, and Tyler arguing with a member of the bar staff. Brittany, Tyler, and Sean walked out of the dollhouse at 2:30 a.m. While standing in the parking lot waiting for their Uber, a member of the staff at the dollhouse brought them each a bottle of water. Their Uber finally arrived at 3:01 a.m. and took them back to the Hilton Hotel Easton. They arrived back at the Hilton at 3:18 a.m. Tyler and Sean had both fallen asleep on the ride back. Due to Brittany's experience with how difficult it could be to wake Tyler up, she reached to the front seat and woke Sean first. That way he could help her get Tyler into the hotel. Brittany was exactly right on the way Tyler could react. When they woke up, an intoxicated and exhausted Tyler became angry and was confused, stating they were at the wrong hotel. Once Tyler got out of the Uber, his angry rant continued as he walked away to smoke a cigarette. He continued to yell, "What the hell, guys? We're not where we are supposed to be." As Tyler walked away, Brittany began to go after him. Sean stopped Brittany and said he would go after Tyler. At the beginning of the night, Tyler had given Sean a key to their hotel room as an invitation that he could crash there if he was too intoxicated to drive home. Since Tyler had the other key and had walked away, Brittany got Sean's key. Sean went after Tyler, and Brittany went to their room to charge her phone and use the restroom. Based on cell phone and messenger conversations, Brittany began contacting Sean via messenger by calling and messages at 3:25 a.m. Between 3:25 and 3:34 a.m., Brittany and Sean communicates through messages as Brittany tried to figure out what was going on and why they weren't back yet. At 3:37 a.m., Brittany called Tyler and they spoke for approximately 3 minutes. Brittany stated that Tyler said he is sorry and that he is walking around smoking a cigarette and will be right back. In the meantime, Sean arrives back at the Hilton Hotel without Tyler. Brittany was confused and upset that Sean didn't come back with Tyler, so they began to argue. At 4:01 a.m., Tyler calls Brittany again. Brittany states that Tyler tells her he is in the woods and can see the hotel. He tells her he will be there in 5 minutes. After the call with Tyler and hearing his friend was on his way back, Sean decided to leave. Brittany decided to go back inside their room to charge her phone while she waited for Tyler to return. 5 minutes turned into 40 minutes, and with no response from Tyler, Brittany began reaching out to friends to see if they had heard from him. At approximately 5 a.m., Brittany calls Harley, a friend of her and Tyler's, and explains the story to him. Harley stays on the phone with Brittany, trying to keep her calm as she walked the streets of Easton looking for Tyler. Harley convinces Brittany to go back to the hotel because Tyler might be there by now waiting for her. When Brittany arrived back at the hotel, Tyler still wasn't there. Not knowing what else to do, Brittany called Tyler's college friend and their former roommate, Adam. Adam was now living in Columbus, and Brittany thought since he was in the area, he could help her look for Tyler. 10 to 15 minutes later, Adam arrived. Him and Brittany drove around the area in his car looking for Tyler. After driving around for approximately an hour, Adam tells Brittany they should check to see if Tyler went back to the hotel. They arrive back at the hotel and find Tyler is still missing. Brittany then writes down her number and sticks it next to the phone in case Tyler comes back and his phone is dead. Brittany and Adam then begin searching all the common areas around the hotel. For the next several hours, Brittany contacted everyone her and Tyler knew, jails, hospitals, and any other place she could think of. Brittany exhausted every idea and resource she had at the time before she called Tyler's parents. She called them at 10:45 a.m., and within hours, Tyler Davis would be reported as a missing person. At this point, Brittany was tired, confused, and worried about her husband. Tyler's dad left his house in Circleville and headed to Easton to help Brittany look for his son. They searched the Easton and surrounding areas for hours on foot, but found no Tyler. Through the past 4 months, there have been numerous searches, flyer distributions, and investigations into the disappearance of Tyler Davis. Today, Jim Magnone is going to join me. Jim works with me on the disappearance of Brian Schaefer and has spent numerous hours investigating the disappearance of Tyler Davis. The next part of this show are segments of a previously recorded interview I did with Jim on his investigation into Tyler's disappearance. So tell me how you got involved in investigating Tyler Davis's disappearance.
Well, it's probably around, I'd say maybe the 6 week mark, I'd say, after he had disappeared, maybe a little less. I remember talking about it to, I think the first person was Lori Davis, and no relation to Tyler. She's the one that's, I think, first involved with Brian Schaefer. So, and we've all talked, amongst ourselves about this. And so I got involved. I think it was Lori that introduced me to Brittany, Tyler's wife. And from there, I was involved with doing some investigations and some of the information that she gave me.
And can you tell me, did she give you access to anything that, let me see how I want to word this, to anything that gave you any factual proof of what could have happened to Tyler that night?
Well, here's the thing. As far as what happened, I'll just kind of say this up front. I don't think anybody knows exactly what happened, but she gave me all the information that I asked for and probably some more on top of that. I had access to her phone bill. I had access to Tyler's Gmail account. I'm not sure if any of the people had access to that. I think maybe one or two other people did, but I might have been the first one into it, other than Bob's friend, who I know that was in there helping Brittany with the map.
I know that it's still an open investigation and you don't want to share everything since Tyler is obviously still missing, but was there anything in his accounts that you were able to go through, or any of the records that you were able to go through, that gave you any clues as...
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. As to what could have happened to him, or if there was any inclination that Tyler could have just walked off of his own accord?
Well, here's the thing with that. Okay, yeah, it's true. It's still an open investigation, and I'm not going to go into details of what was in the Gmail because I obviously said I wouldn't. But I can say this, and this is general stuff. Number one, Tyler was lost, and that's a fact. He was asking for directions, trying to find his way back. I think he walked too far, and I think that once he walked far, I don't know if most people realize, when you're walking through Columbus in the middle of the night, everything kind of looks the same. And if you're not familiar with it and you're walking around, it's one thing to look at a map from an aerial view and you might say, oh, you're right here. Well, look how far he is. Well, he's not very far. It's totally different when you're walking the streets. And he was intoxicated to a degree. I don't know how much. I actually heard his voice. Don't think he was that bad, but again, that's just my opinion. But like I said, he was lost. He was asking for directions. The directions he was asking for, to me, didn't seem like the correct thing to say, and I think it maybe, made it worse for him as far as him, getting further away from where he was staying. So that's one thing I can say. There's also, in my opinion, a little bit of discrepancy from the map. The map doesn't seem to be 100% correct. And what I mean is there's a walking map, and I think everybody's seen that. It's been posted on the internet. And then there's also GPS directions, and they're a little bit off. Well, let's just say they're off. And a lot of people who, have Gmail and hooked up to their Android, and they're asking for directions, or if let's say they're wanting to know where they're at exactly. There's supposedly so many feet or even yards of discrepancy from where you're actually at, but at the same time, that phone is also pinging off a tower or GPS, and it's going to put you in an exact spot at certain times. So, there's little discrepancies there that tell me that the walking map and his other coordinates were just they weren't together. They weren't gelling together.
Okay, and I know that there's not really an explanation for why they don't gel together, but I'm going to take into consideration that the GPS coordinates, based on when he was asking for directions where he was at that time, are going to be more accurate than the walking map that was, created. So based on the locations and the walking map and everything that you have, the discrepancies in locations, is it huge?
I would say that they're not something that is off by a few feet, but still in the same direction. If you get what I'm saying, if it's showing you walking a certain distance and you believe that later on that you were, a few yards away, or I wasn't exactly in this spot, it's not that. It's more than that. To me, in my opinion, it's more than that. So I don't know why. I really haven't been able to find out why, to be honest. And I've even called, phone companies and researched it on Google. And it's not just a matter of, whether I have an Android or not, or a Gmail account. It's just that nobody seems to know. And I'm not saying that someone was in there and doing things, because honestly, I don't know. But my opinion, I would say no. But for some reason, like I said, it just doesn't. They don't come together at all. And I think that may be one of the reasons things stalled at first, because maybe no one knew exactly where to look. And that's a big area. That's another thing. I mean, I know they searched, wasn't it by Sam's Club? I think they searched over in that area, and I think there was a tower that his phone pinged on over there. So that would be further away than Abbott Labs. It would be the other end, the opposite direction of where they were staying.
I kind of asked you this in one of the other questions, but it was like a two-parter, and we really didn't get to it. But every time an adult goes missing, one of the first things that we always hear from any police department is, well, it's not illegal for an adult to go missing. In your research, have you found anything to insinuate that Tyler would go missing of his own accord?
Well, I don't think so, honestly. Whether somebody's having marital problems, and I'm not saying they were at all, but whether they're having marital problems or not, I really think that Tyler, in my opinion, would never leave his son. People will leave their spouses, and again, I'm not saying that's what that he would have, even if they didn't have a child. I'm just saying that there's no way, in my opinion, that he would ever leave his child. So to me, that shows a lot that, he's out there, and it's not of his own accord, in my opinion, that he's not back. He never made it home.
Okay, and not only his son, but we have heard from Brittany as well, like while talking to her and during other interviews, how close of a bond he had with his parents, especially his mother.
Yes, again, that's true. Yeah, he's supposedly really close with his parents and probably closer to his mom. But again, yeah, they don't see this as something normal for him at all. So that's another, to me, good sign that this isn't something that he's doing because he wanted to, leave his life and start something new somewhere.
Right. And aside from the fact that we don't think that he would leave his family, Tyler is described as a pretty punctual person. According to Brittany, he hadn't missed a day of work in 2 years.
Yeah, and he seemed to be very well liked by his employees. I've even seen people come on sites and say, I work with Tyler. He's a great guy. He made work fun. He was always trying his best to, make it fun, a good work environment. He was even called upon, I know, to go to other stores to fill in at times, and I guess they really liked him because he made it a good work environment, which is rare. I think he was pretty easygoing, actually, at least at the workplace, and they liked him.
It's approximately midnight, so it's now February 24th and Brittany's birthday. They go to the dollhouse, and they're at the dollhouse. Let's talk about what you know about their time at the dollhouse.
Well, from what I understand, I think they left the Hilton. I think around, it was a little bit after midnight. I don't have the exact time in front of me for that. But they drove there. They took an Uber, and they stayed there for, I don't know, for maybe a couple hours. But anything as far as relevancy, as far as anything relevant there, I've heard some things about them maybe getting into a little argument there. And I don't mean relevant as far as, I'll explain later what I mean by relevancy, but I heard they got in a little bit of argument, and I don't know what it was about, but I think Brittany got upset. It could be just the fact that they were at a strip club, and maybe there was a little bit of, maybe a little bit of jealousy. I don't even know if I want to say jealousy, but you know what I mean. Like they're young, they're out, they're drinking, and they were with Tyler's friend. So they left. I think they left there, and they waited outside for a while. And I know that the bar closed at 2:30. It wasn't. A lot of people, I think, said 2:00, but it's actually 2:30, and I actually verified that. I know they waited outside for a while in the parking lot for the Uber, and I think maybe 25 minutes roughly. In fact, it's been said that while they were out there, I think one or two of the employees brought out some water for them because they knew they were out there waiting for a while. And then after they left, after they were picked up, they got back to the Hilton at, according to the map, at exactly 3:18 a.m.
Okay, and this map you're referring to is something that you pulled from Tyler's Gmail account, correct?
Yes, and I believe that to be true. I believe that the times are, as far as right up until they got back to the Hilton, that it was exactly 3:18 a.m. And the timeline, if you have the timeline for all that, or if you don't, I'll give you exact times of when they left the dollhouse and when they. But like I said, I know it was 3:18 when they got back to the Hilton.
Right, and actually we know not only from you finding that in Tyler's Gmail account, but we also know that based on Uber records of when they arrived at the hotel. So not only is the time accurate on what is showing up on the maps in Tyler's Gmail account, but the location was accurate as well. Correct.
Yeah, I think the location was accurate, and when there's when this Gmail is showing your route, okay, your driving map, and then there's a walking map. The driving map is a little bit different looking, and some people probably know what I'm talking about. So, for example, if you're driving around town and you're going down, certain blocks and cutting over, the map seems to only catch your the directions or your location, say, every 30 seconds or so. So when you're driving really fast, it's going to look like you're jumping over buildings, and because it's not taking your exact route, because it's only pinging you every 30 seconds or so. But when you're walking, you're going to get a more accurate map as you walk, because you're not going so fast. But in a car, it looks different. So, that if you can kind of picture that, I think online where there is the map, I'm not sure if it shows the driving route, but the driving route was from when they got back to the Hilton, which is around, say, midnight. They went to the dollhouse, and then they got back at 3:18 a.m. And then from 3:18 a.m. on, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I've seen both maps, actually, the walking and the GPS coordinate map that we have made of Tyler's, and I understand what you're talking about on the difference of locations. Do you think that a public search done closer to the last known GPS coordinates of Tyler would help?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think they were searching in the right area. I mean, the map, the walking map shows him down at Abbott Labs, but I do know that the police had searched an area by Sam's Club, which is the opposite end of town. It's the other direction, as far as where the Hilton's at. And so if you're up that way and that's the other direction, you can't be at two places at once. So if they're saying he was down at Abbott Labs and let's say the map cut off at I don't know, I think it was 405 maybe, or it shows him kind of at the edge of the parking lot where the corner is by the street. And then it kind of stops there and people assume his phone died, which it could have maybe. But I don't think, personally, I don't think he was down that way at all.
What is the last known time that you know for 100% sure that Tyler used his phone?
Well, that's a specific question. So specifically, I would say it's 3:53 because I heard him ask for directions. Now, from there, about a minute or two later, it said that he said transit directions, and of course, I can't 100% say it was him. Was it? Probably, but I didn't hear his voice. But at 3:53, he asked for directions, and 3:53 a.m., I can say that that's the last time, for sure. Did someone get his phone within two minutes and ask for transit directions? I doubt it, but that's answer your question as far as being very specific.
What is the last known activity time period that you have?
So it was 4:03 when the phone made two calls to Brittany's phone, like she said, that he had called and said he was near the woods. He was about 5 minutes away. He'd be right over, be right there, whatever he said. And then she said immediately after she hung up, it rang again. And she said, hello. There were 4 seconds of silence, and then the phone went dead. So that is the last time as far as, the phone bill and the phone calling out. So it was 4:03 a.m.
So not only since you have been investigating Tyler's disappearance, have you been talking to Brittany, and you actually communicate with other family members of Brittany's as well, but you were actually able to talk to Sean, Brittany and Tyler's friend that was out with them that night, correct?
Yes, I did speak with him on one occasion, and I had some brief text messages with him also.
Okay. Would you say that he was helpful and forthcoming? You don't have to share the details of your conversation because, like I said, it's an investigation, but was he helpful and forthcoming?
Absolutely. Yeah, he was. I mean, when I asked Brittany if he was willing to talk to me, she said, I'll ask. And she got right back to me. She says, yeah, he definitely will talk to you. And, I understand the fact that, he wants his privacy to a degree. And I think because early on people were making a lot of accusations. And, but I asked him some questions, and everything I asked him, I can tell you that he answered. And if there were things that he didn't remember, in maybe because it was late or they were drinking or exact times, then he would just tell me. He'd say, yeah, I don't remember exactly. He admitted that they were out drinking, and he was just he was trying to follow Tyler, and he wasn't successful. And he said it, he kind of gave up and started heading back.
A decision that probably still bothers him.
You know what? It does. And he even said that. And I think about what we do on a daily basis and think about things that we've done with friends. And when we're with them, we're not paying attention because we're not thinking that someone's going to go missing and possibly never be found. So when that night started out, and they were drinking, having fun, enjoying their time. It was Brittany's birthday celebration. There were things that they were remembering, and as human beings do, they don't take in certain parts of the night, like exact times of where they were, unless you can find that out with maybe a receipt with a credit card or your phone. But you're not remembering all these things. But if somebody says something to you, you may remember and catch it and say, well, this was odd. Maybe, he said this. But for the most part, you're not going to remember too many details. And you're kicking yourself later because, you're thinking, well, geez, if I could only remember this or that. But he was definitely forthcoming in the questions that I asked him. And like I said, I have no reason to believe that he was trying to hide something from me. It was just a unfortunate thing that happened that night. And I think there was a little bit of tension, but here's my opinion. If people say to me, is there anything that leads you to believe that, his friend had something to do with his disappearance, or if Brittany did, I'll say no. And if Tyler walked off because of an argument, that put him in this situation, but it was an indirect thing. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't, in my opinion, his friend or Brittany that did something. It was just the situation. And let's say Tyler was, walking down the street to cool off a little bit, and his friend went after him and was trying to cool him down. And, he gave up. He's like, all right, man, I'm going back, come back when you're ready. And then from there, he ended up getting lost. And, I want to add this. I think people need to remember, and some people might not know, his friend was from Columbus. He's from the area. He knew the area. But Tyler wasn't, and Tyler didn't know the area. I don't even know if he knew it well at all, especially where they were at, in the eastern area. So when he was walking, and even if you're probably a half a block away, I'm not sure how well. I do know this. He was relying on his phone to get back. He wasn't looking around with his eyes to see. I think it was just a matter of, asking Google, take me to here, take me there. And it wasn't working out. And he wasn't specific enough is what the problem is. And that's very unfortunate, because I think that if he would ask more specifically for directions, then he would be here with us today.
And we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, 4 months later.
No, and there's a lot of people that are here today because they ask the right questions. And you would never know who Tyler Davis was if he would have asked for these directions correctly. And he was confused. I think it was late. He was tired. He was drinking, and something happened. Something unfortunate happened, and we all have our ideas of what might happen or speculation, but really no one knows unless the police do, and they're not saying. That's always an option, but they're also not going to give anybody information. I think here's another thing I want to kind of say, and this is just my opinion, but a lot of people are saying things like, the police aren't telling us anything, or we deserve to know, or we have the right to know. No, you don't. Nobody has the right to know anything. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there that really want to help, but when you say that we deserve to know or we need to know, if the police don't want to give you information, then they don't. And if that's their decision, and if let's say they tell Brittany something and they tell her not to say anything, then she has to keep her mouth shut about it. And she shouldn't be, judged like that, because they're telling her, if they tell her things and she doesn't listen, they're not going to tell her things anymore. And I think it's more important for her to be on the side of the police, because they'll share information, than it is to satisfy the public's curiosity.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. One thing that I do want to point out about the police not sharing any information that I find a little strange, not too strange, but it is strange to me. With the Brian Schaefer disappearance, with the Joey LaBute disappearance, with several other disappearances, around the world, we always get to see some surveillance footage of the missing person. I have recently read in the Easton area there are 300 cameras. So that would be 300 cameras that Tyler would have had to have missed that night unless they have some form of surveillance of him. I mean, do you find it odd that they have never shared this surveillance with anybody, or at least a clip of showing a direction that he was walking or anything?
Well, and I didn't know the question you were going to ask me, so just to let everybody know, I knew that's what you were going to say. As soon as you started saying that, it's one of the biggest, questions that people have. Is he on camera? Is he on, surveillance anywhere? To my knowledge, the police have never publicly commented that there is no footage of Tyler. Now, am I wrong about that? Am I missing somewhere? Because maybe I am.
No, you're not wrong. And I haven't found anything either that they have ever said. I know at one point in time they thought that they had Tyler on camera, and I believe, and I could be wrong on this time, but I believe it was around 4:15 a.m. Coming back to the hotel, but it actually turned out to be Sean after
Right.
It was further looked into.
Right.
But I have never heard that they actually have Tyler on camera, that it has been proven. I mean, there's been rumors, but I mean, this case has had more rumors than I have ever seen.
Right.
To describe it the way someone put it to me earlier, it is a modern day witch hunt.
Well, it is, and it's a shame because people tend to like to gossip and not only give their opinion, but really, I've never seen anybody come down so hard on a spouse as they are with Brittany, and I really, it's really unwarranted, especially since the police haven't said a word. And so, if you would ask me, is Tyler on camera? I would say I don't know. If you would ask me, do you think Tyler's on camera? I would say absolutely. I'd say he's probably on multiple cameras. I mean, unless these cameras just happen not to work or he was invisible. I mean, really. So that's the thing. They're not saying anything. And there has been some speculation out there or some rumors that, certain people have talked to the police and they've said to people, he was seen over by the condos, he was seen over on this street or that street. I don't know that to be true. I'm not saying it's even false, but I kind of would find it hard to believe if the average Joe calls up the police and says, hey, I want to know if Tyler Davis is on camera. Sure, he's over, we saw him down by the condos. I kind of doubt they do that. I think they're being very tight-lipped, and I think for two reasons. Number one, if it is an investigation that there's foul play, they don't want to screw up. And number two, every detective has their own way. And maybe certain protocols are followed, but at the same time, I think they also have their own way of doing things, and maybe some aren't as open about cases like this. People will say that, and you mentioned other cases where they'll show some footage or they'll tell a little bit more. There seems to be nothing on this case, but at the same time, they are investigating. I do know that, because I speak with Brittany and she talks to them, and they definitely are working on this case. This is an ongoing case. I don't think up to this point that they're just kind of treating it as a we don't know and almost like a cold case. I really think it's very active, and I don't think that at this time they're interested in giving out the information. As far as the cameras go, I don't think they really need. Maybe, if this is my opinion, but if Tyler's on camera somewhere, and let's say they'd show it to the public, usually when you show footage to the public, it's because you're asking for their help. I don't think they need that specific help. I don't think they need to show him walking up, across the street or near a certain building for our help. What does that tell us? I don't know. I mean, it just tells us that they don't need our help with showing footage, but I don't know why.
You and I both worked very closely on the Brian Schaefer case, and actually it's how we met. Mm. Every time I read about Tyler's disappearance, there's always someone in the comments that compares Tyler's case to Brian's case. I know that I see a lot of similarities, but I don't think that the cases are connected at all. Do you?
Well, connected in a way that if, well, did he run away? No. Did Brian run away? That's a whole different, subject. And yeah, he could have, very well could have. But Tyler wasn't, as far as I know, someone that was leading up to a runaway. He wasn't like he was depressed, or he was wanting to, leave his life behind because of certain things that might have happened that did to Brian. And then people also say, like, well, was there foul play? There's, as far as Brian goes, there's no proof whatsoever that there was foul play. But here's the difference. If there was foul play with Tyler, when Brian disappeared, it was spring break, and there was tons of people on the street still at that time. When Tyler was walking around Columbus, how much traffic was there at 3:30 a.m. to 4 a.m.? I don't know, but it was your average weekend in Columbus.
Well, actually, you have to take into consideration too, it was your average weekend in February in Columbus.
Right, exactly. And that's what I was going to say. As far as, your average weekend, was there anything going on? Was there, any type of conventions in the area, or, something that would bring in a lot of people and have them out on the street? Even if there was, there's a big difference between 2 a.m., where there is, it's spring break and there's a lot of bars and tons of people, or it's 4 a.m., it's February, it's a little bit colder out, there's nothing going on other than these shops that have closed hours earlier, and he's walking around and most likely by himself, and very few cars, and maybe not even other people walking on the street.
Okay. Well, I do know that according to the timeline that we have, that Lori has helped Brittany create, at around 5 a.m., Brittany was walking the streets of the East End area looking for Tyler on the phone with a friend. And she did say that it was still dark at the time, but there were a few people walking around. But by 6 a.m., when it had started turning light, it was getting super busy.
Right, and that's normal, I would say, for almost an everyday time in Columbus. Maybe now this was Sunday, it might have been a little bit less traffic at the time because most people aren't going to work, but there's, it's Columbus nonetheless. That's another thing, the shops on Sunday, I think they open a little later, but I'm not 100% sure.
They actually do. And according to Brittany, her and Tyler had actually had it planned to go out like they did on February 23rd. And then on February 24th, once they woke up, they were going to go shopping for a little bit for her birthday, and she was going to pick out a birthday present. And then they were going to go to Tyler's parents' house in Circleville, Ohio, to pick up their son.
Correct. Yes, they were going to do that. I think they had some type of couples event planned the next morning, and maybe early morning, or late morning, I should say. And then from there, do a few more things, and then actually, pick up their child.
Let's talk about the fact of the way Brittany and her family members have been treated, all while going through this tragedy of Tyler going missing on Brittany's 23rd birthday. That's something that people don't take into consideration. This was her birthday. It was after midnight, so it was her birthday. And, I don't want her to go another birthday wondering where her husband is.
No, I want to get into that a little bit more. People tend to judge, and we all do it. And some people may say, well, she's not acting the way she should, or, at this point she's acting like somebody else, somebody who maybe is guilty or is not, you're supposed to cry now or whatever. But I've spoke with Brittany for hours on the phone over time. So I've actually, gotten to know her, and the side of her. Number one, you're not, when you're typing on the internet, there's no emotion. When you're being interviewed by a show, you're nervous. You're trying the best to think and be analytical with your thinking as far as times. But you don't always show your emotions, especially when you're going to be interviewed and they're going to be asking a million questions and trying to find out what happened. And she doesn't know what happened. She's always saying, "What next? What can we do next? Hand out more flyers, do more searches." And I have seen the side of her that probably very few people see. And what I mean by that is, she is just lost. She doesn't know what to do. Her husband's missing, and on top of that, people are accusing her and being just so hard on her. I mean, to the point where I've never seen anything like this. It's really, it's new to me. Of all the sites I've been on, she's not a person of interest. So usually when you're not a person of interest and on any site you go onto, you're not allowed to treat somebody like that. But some of the sites that are maybe private or not moderated as well are really being hard on her. And I think it's definitely not warranted at all.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. As someone who was an outsider, or like they call them, an armchair detective, like I was, like some of these people are on these sites and everything, I got into this to help the families with missing persons and to help find answers for the missing persons. I cannot believe how Brittany has been treated. It's been downright horrific, the things that people have said about her and slandered her name and said things that are just, I mean, it's just, I don't even have a word for it. It's mind-boggling to me that people have treated her this way. Most of the time I see support immediately, and I've seen support immediately even for people that are guilty, of the crimes that they have committed. And if you find out later that they are guilty, but they had support initially. Brittany hasn't had that at all.
No, she had no support when it comes to the public at all. And you got to remember, if people can remember what they were like when they were 23 years old, just turning 23, newly married, a child, and you're trying to cope with different things, and all of a sudden you wake up one day. Can you imagine losing your spouse at 23? I can't remember when I was 23, let alone thinking that being that young, you're never thinking of anything but the next day and plans and having fun. It's your birthday. We're going to go out, and you literally lose your husband at the end of the night on your 23rd birthday. And more than that, your child has lost a father who he barely knew. And, there could be some miracle happen and he's still alive. He's out there. He's lost his memory, and I hope to God that's it. If he did leave, and I don't think he did, then I hope that's the other one. That's the other alternative. He left, because at least he's alive and maybe he'll come back one day. But talking to Brittany, when I go into this, I try to help families too. But when I first met Brittany, I wasn't thinking she was innocent or guilty. I was just going by the information that I was gathering. Okay, so a lot of people in the beginning, I think what they make the mistake that they make is they form a judgment and they go from there. So in other words, you right away you're talking to somebody and you think, well, they're guilty or they're innocent. Both of those assumptions can get you into trouble when it comes to information coming in, because when that information comes in, you're gonna analyze it differently if you've already made an assumption of their guilt or their innocence. So I never started out like that. I just let the facts kind of happen and go from there. And if you expect if you expect a person to act a certain way when it comes to their emotions, then it also is going to throw you off, because you don't know how people are going to react. I've been in situations where there's something happen, a tragedy happen, or even an accident. Some people stand around and they just stare, and other people are crying. And other people, it just doesn't seem to bother them, but it is, or you don't know it is, because everybody's different on how they react. Okay. I know that there was a post about Brittany that she was at a funeral and she was seen smiling or something. Somebody took a photo. I'm going to tell you something. That pissed me off so bad, because I can give you an example of times at funerals where I've seen people crying their eyes out, and that same person, 5 minutes later is laughing because they were reminiscing about a good time. So you could always catch somebody smiling or laughing, and there's no rules on how you're supposed to act. And, she's told me before, and I, will not go into specifics with her conversations, but she's told me before that, she'll, many times during the day, it's just the realization comes back that Tyler's gone, and she doesn't know where he's at, and she keeps the faith that he's still alive, and she's never going to give up looking for him. And she says that a lot. She says, I'm never going to give up. I'm going to the assumption that he's out there and he's alive. Why or how, I don't know, but that's the way I'm going to think, and I think it's a good way of thinking.
I think so too, and I do want to say that, for everyone out there that thinks Brittany is guilty or knows more or anything like that, little things that I look for while communicating with people is not one time has Brittany ever used Tyler in the past tense. And I know a lot of people slip up that way. If they have killed their spouse or killed someone, they start referring to them in a past tense instead of present tense.
Right.
She's never once referred to him in a past tense. And as a matter of fact, she still talks about him like he's going to walk through the door any minute.
Yeah, she does. And that's something I think most people don't realize or catch about her. And if you look at the timeline, and if you look at the, where not only where Tyler was at, but, Brittany and his friend, I can't fathom how they would have done something, to hurt Tyler. They weren't. Do I think it's related to Brian's disappearance? I don't think Brian's disappearance is related to anything. But I do think that there's other people that went missing in Columbus and other areas too around here that are related. Is Tyler related to that? Possibly. Did he maybe say something to the wrong person while he was walking down the street? Maybe a car passed him, or maybe, like I said, maybe you mouth off to the wrong person, they come back, something happens. Was it an accident? Was there somebody out there driving around trying to find a young man around that certain age, because that's kind of the age of where these guys disappear. I think Tyler was 29, and it seems like it's around that age that it's males in their mid, say, to late 20s that are disappearing. But do I think it's related to them? I actually kind of don't. I don't think so. Anything could be true, but I don't think so. I have my own opinions. But again, my opinions don't mean anything, in my opinion, because we don't know. People will say, well, I think this happened, or, you know what, this is definitely what happened. I'll be the first one to admit if I don't know, I don't know. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong too. I can admit when I'm wrong. But I just don't really know. I can speculate. Okay.
This is my least favorite theory that gets involved for every male that goes missing, ages college to, let's say, almost 30, and it's the smiley face killer, the not proven serial killer that leaves a calling card of a smiley face where he dumps every one of his victims.
I do know that you're not a fan of the smiley face theory at all, and you don't believe in it. And if I had to say, do I believe in it? First of all, all these guys that are disappearing around the country, and a lot of them are ending up in bodies of water. It's not going to be one person. It's going to be, say, a network of people. And I think that's maybe the two detectives that have talked about this. They think there's kind of a network of people that are doing this. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. Are they all related? No. Can you prove any of them related? Not really, unless you go with the smiley face theory of the smiley face itself. Well, I've seen the photos of some of these smiley faces, and if there was somebody out there doing this and they wanted people to know, hey, look, we're part of the smiley face bunch, you think first of all they would paint it the same way, so they would take credit for it. These photos don't even really look like they were made by the same group. So I don't have any clear-cut proof, in my opinion, that the smiley face killer or killers exist. So I don't think that Tyler was, a part of that, because I don't 100% believe that even exists in itself.
Not to mention, you're talking about probably the most popular graffiti in the world, a smiley face.
Yeah, right.
You can find them everywhere. If you see graffiti anywhere, I guarantee you there is a smiley face close to it.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's, a stick figure or a smiley face is the easiest thing for a person to draw. So, when people, I think if you said to somebody, if you gave them a can of paint and you said, hey, draw me something on the sidewalk here, or spray something on this wall, a large percentage would draw a smiley face because it's commonplace.
Yes, I agree, and that's why I never put any credit into that. Now, could it be some kind of gang initiation or something along those lines where, there are a group of smiley face killers, as has been suggested? Yeah, I could almost believe something along those lines, but I don't believe that Tyler Davis and, for the record, Brian Schaefer are victims of the smiley face killer.
No, not at all. I mean, if Brian is if some foul play happened, could it have been random? Yeah, maybe. Could it have been somebody that knew him? More likely, if it was foul play, to believe. But he was walking around town at a time where there wasn't many people. What's the chances of the type of person driving by that's going to commit a murder? I mean, there's chances for everything. But if you're walking around Columbus at 2 a.m. and you're trying to get killed, and let's say you start screaming at every car that goes by, what's the chances of somebody turning around and depending on the area you're in? I don't think the area he was in was that type of area. And that may be saying too much, but some people are going to disagree with me. But at the same time, I don't think he was in the area they think he was in. I think he was in more of an upscale area where there were shops and, where they were going kind of earlier. The chance of foul play, in my opinion, is pretty low, regardless of what type of foul play it was.
This is the one thing that I have actually been worried about since the beginning, and I actually shared this with you and Lori at one point in time. In a relatively close vicinity of Columbus, a friend of mine and former coworker, his cousin was leaving a bar in Columbus, and it was roughly around 2 a.m., and he was struck and killed, and the driver, it was a hit and run, and the driver left. He was walking. I mean, his body was found. Do you think that it's a possibility that Tyler could have been a victim of a hit and run where they actually concealed his body?
I do. And, it's funny because we met not too long ago, and I've been to Columbus quite a few times, but I was driving through that area, and I was looking around. The first thing I noticed was, how people say Tyler said, I'm in the woods. And then they'll say that Brittany was making comments, 2 trees, and he's in the woods. And they're like, that's ridiculous. But let me tell you, there are many, many wooded areas right there in town that you can just walk to and hide. You could just walk into, there's a bunch, you'll never, if Tyler was hit, let's say he was, walking down the road and somebody wasn't paying attention, he was struck by a vehicle, and he could have even been thrown 20, 30 feet into, a big area of trees and still be there. Now, how many areas are like that? Too many to check. I mean, it would have to be luck or construction or kids playing, but you don't really have kids playing in those areas. If you walk the streets and you look around the eastern area, there's lots of little areas of trees. And, somebody that lives there, I know, that posted on one of the sites, it was a girl, I think she even said it. She's like, there's lots of wooded areas. And so, yeah, he could have been struck. Somebody could have panicked, and after he was struck, maybe realized that he wasn't alive anymore, or thought he wasn't alive, and then even drug him 20 feet into an area and left him go. And again, how many people have we heard of being found within so many yards of where they went missing? And it was a year later or 2 years later. I can't remember his name. There was a kid they just found recently. I think he was in a band, and he was missing for a long time. They just found him a few months ago, maybe a year ago, and he wasn't very far from where he was last seen. And it was just they never saw him, and they think he committed suicide. And I can see him. I can see his face. I can't remember his name. You may know who I'm talking about. But that's an example of somebody that, he committed suicide, and it was actually in an area where he wasn't found for like 10 years. So, yeah, it could have been a hit and run. You have to think about what he said. And I've got no reason to believe that Brittany's lying. Why would she be? She said that he called and said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on my way back. I'm in the woods. Yeah, he could have been taking a shortcut to where he thought he was coming back to the Hilton, and maybe he was. But whether he was or he wasn't, let's say he took a shortcut and he's walking through some trees. I'm in the woods. I can see it from here. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Now, here's the thing we don't know. Was he looking at the Hilton when he said, I'm 5 minutes away, I can see the hotel? You don't know. So where was he at in that wooded area? And then from there, what happened? Was he coming out of the woods and stepped onto a road and gotten hit? That's, in my opinion, pretty likely, especially if you're coming out of a wooded area by a street and you're not paying attention and somebody else isn't paying attention, or they're drunk and he gets hit. They could have actually picked him up and put him in their trunk and took him somewhere.
I agree with that. I think it's a very sad but plausible theory. And one thing I want to say about the area is if you stretch out from the Easton area just a little bit when you were talking about wooded areas,
mm-hmm.
There's also some Columbus metro parks close by that are heavily wooded.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there are a lot of possibilities of wooded areas where it is. And I know that most people think, oh, well, this is Columbus and it's a city. But Columbus is surrounded by a lot of very rural areas, and there are a lot of foresty/woodsy areas around.
Oh, a ton. And people don't realize that. You're not, go back in time and what was Columbus? It was just farmland. So it gets developed, and as it grows outward, you're still going to have these patches of trees and land that are not developed, and they're good places to hide a body. I hate to put it like that, but and somebody who lives there and is familiar enough with the area that may have been an accident, and wanted to cover it up because say they were drunk, they would know where to put a body. And that's better. I mean, there's no good way of putting it, but if it was an accident, at least it was an accident and somebody covered it up. It wasn't premeditated. They panicked. Whose fault was it? We'll never know. But an accident's an accident. The right thing to do would have been reported if that's what happened, but if somebody's drinking and they have a way out, they're going to take it. And if there was somebody else too, they may, the only way we'll know is if you accidentally find him, or if there was another person involved and we talk and may feel guilty one day or just come forward. And I would say, please do that. I mean, that's another thing. If you want to do something anonymous, there's ways of doing things that they're never going to know who called or sent a message. If anybody out there knows where he's at, and if it was an accident, and you never want to be caught, at least give the family closure and call and let them know, where Tyler is. If it was an accident and it wasn't premeditated, somebody, let's say he was hit by a car and that person was drinking and they panicked, or if somebody else was with them and they helped or whatever. The bottom line is, if that's the case and you're listening, there's many different ways to stay anonymous. You don't have to say who you are, but as what I was saying is give the family closure. If that's the case and at least let them know where he's at, and that way people will know at least he's no longer with us. Another thing too with people, if somebody knows something about Tyler and they want to let people know. For example, let's say it was an accident, where he's at. Let's say you don't have to call the police if you're scared to do that. Call somebody and maybe a member of the family or anything to let people know where Tyler is and at least have closure. Everybody's different, and if it was an accident, people are still going to want justice. Everybody's like, we got to have justice for the person, and I understand that. But family members are different. Some family members will say, I don't really care. I just want to know where my loved one is. If I had a choice of getting justice and never finding them, because let's say that, somebody gets murdered and there's never a body, but they know that this person was, I'd rather just know where my loved one is at and have closure than to have justice. I know that's just me. Everybody's different, but knowing where this person is to give them a proper burial and closure in that aspect, then justice can be later on. So I think, I'm not speaking for anybody in Tyler's family, or I'm not speaking for Brittany, but if it was an accident and you know where he may be, there's many different avenues that you can use to stay anonymous.
Yes, you can. And Missing in Ohio actually has a tip line as well, where you can leave an anonymous message for us, and we will report it to the police for you. Okay, we know that around 4:03 a.m., Tyler's phone called Brittany, and they talked, and then when they hung up, he called back, and it connected for 4 seconds, and then it ended abruptly. Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I find it very curious that happened. I mean, if somebody goes missing or if they get lost or if it's foul play, it's usually not something that quick. And from what she said, it was silence. It was an open line, but she wasn't hearing anything. So if somebody was, attacking Tyler or doing something to his phone, you would at least hear something. At 4:03, they talked for, not very long. And then she said he hung up. He said, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And then it almost immediately rang back. She said, hello, 4 seconds of silence, and then it went dead. And then when she called back right after that, it went to voicemail. So now you've got to think, what are the possibilities? A, the phone died. B, he shut it off. C, maybe if he did get hit by a car, but you would think if there was an open line, you would hear something. So as far as the phone dying, I can't say that I'm an expert on these type of things, but I've heard that in the research I've done, the police should be able to find out his battery life. Like, there's a lot of things that you can find out about these phones that people don't realize. And one of them, I was told that it would even be able to show how much battery life he had left on his phone. Now, if it went dead, then it went dead at exactly when he called her back. But why did he call her back? You don't know. Why did he call? Was it an accident? The type of phone he had? It's a possibility. I think we've all done the butt dial. It may be harder on some phones today, but at the same time, maybe he did. He had just called her. Maybe he accidentally pressed that button and he didn't hear her when she was saying hello, but it's still disconnected and it shouldn't have. So people would say that it died. But in my opinion, to die exactly when he called back like that, and even if it was an accident, I don't see that happen. We're not going to know until maybe, when this is solved, if there was battery life left in his phone. There was talk about him having, his battery was low, but at the same time, that was, I think, mentioned at the bar, that he said his battery was low. I think there was mention of that. But that can't really be the case, because we're talking probably another hour and a half, roughly, of life on his phone. He was asking for directions, and he was actively pinging the tower and the GPS the whole time he was walking, the whole time. And then it abruptly I really don't know what to think of that, and it's very odd. There's no real scenario that I can come up with that fits those things that actually happened. A, why did he call back? B, why wasn't there any sound with an open line? C, why did it abruptly end? Did it die? Did he hang up again by accident? Was there any cell life, a battery life left in a cell phone? I'd love to know. But that in itself is a mystery almost as much as what happened to him.
So one thing that I always read about Tyler's disappearance and that Brittany has told me is how angry he was when he woke up in the Uber and everything. And it seemed a little strange to me that he would be so angry when waking up. And I know that you mentioned something about an argument earlier. Do you think that could be the reason Tyler was so angry, or do you think Tyler was just one of those people that, were angry when they woke up from a drunken sleep?
Well, it could be a little bit of both, but I think that, and this is just my opinion and speculation, but I think that the argument or whatever happened at the strip club, whatever he may have been mad about, and it could have been something, minor. It could have been him flirting with a girl there, whatever. I think it probably kind of escalated, and when they left, he probably did fall asleep in the car, and when he got woken up, he was probably a little bit disoriented. And then when he came to, he kind of, was probably still a little mad and remember what was going on. There was supposedly an argument with him and his friend outside of the hotel where he was kicking some things and I guess being a little bit difficult. I don't think him leaving, in other words, okay, I'll put it this way. Whatever happened at the strip club, whatever the argument was about, I don't think was a direct cause of him disappearing. I think it was indirect. In other words, he got out and he started to walk away because he was mad, probably because of what happened. But from there, I don't think it had anything to do with the argument, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. One thing I want to touch on for a second, and you might not want to put this in there, and that's okay. Tyler, when he woke up in this angry, rant that he was going on, he made mention that they were at the wrong place, that they were at the wrong hotel, that they weren't where they were supposed to be. Do you think that Tyler really believed that they were at the wrong location?
That's a tough question because it's possible. And when you look at what he said, supposedly what he said at the end of the conversation, when he said to Brittany, I can see the hotel, I'll be there in 5 minutes. If he said that when he got out of the car, that he was at the wrong hotel, then most likely what he was looking at while he was on his phone for the last time was not the Hilton. How would he not recognize the hotel, or how would he recognize the hotel from that far away when he didn't recognize it when he got out of the car? And it could have been that when they pulled up, I'm pretty sure they pulled up to the front doors, and I think there's like a canopy or a big, where a car can pull under and let a guest out at the doors. He may have not recognized that from where they got out of the car. If they parked in the parking garage and they walked around in the daytime, it would look a little different. But I think it's possible that he didn't recognize it right away, and then from there maybe he did, but it quickly escalated into an argument, and they were yelling, I think, in his friend, and it was said that he kicked a planter or something there, and then he started walking away. And again, that walking away was, an indirect reason why he never came back. And then on top of that, unfortunately, he was asking for directions and he wasn't getting it right. So those two things was just, against him that night. It was just an unfortunate set of circumstances that came together that led to him not coming back. And why specifically, again, no one really seems to know at this point.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there was anything else.
You know, I would like to add this. You can just put this in any way you want. You really have to wonder what he was looking at when he said, "I can see the hotel. I'm in the woods." The only place he really could have been looking at the Hilton from the woods, and I don't know the street. I don't remember the name of the street, but if you go behind the Hilton, you have to go through a big field and across the road. And when you go across the road, there's a wooded area back there. And in fact, I think it's private property. I don't know how he would have gotten back there, but if you would go across the street into that wooded area and head straight up, you could probably get to Sam's Club where they had searched. So it's possible if he walked from Sam's Club down and then made a right through those woods and was looking at the Hilton from across the highway. The only thing with that is that vantage point, I don't think he'd be familiar with to know that was the Hilton. And that's the only place that he could be in the woods and say, "Hey, I'm 5 minutes away. I'll be right there." Other than that, if you go down the road and there's a, is it the Macy's? Was it Macy's that we had talked about before where he was walking past?
Yes.
And there was another building there with like a steeple similar to the Hilton. And again, I can't remember offhand. But I actually posted a photo of it on Tyler's site that I was thinking it could have been
Nordstrom.
What's that?
Was it Nordstrom?
You're right, Nordstrom's. Now, if he was coming down, let's see, that'd be Stelzer. If he was coming down Stelzer, and there is a little shortcut he could have went through, like a path through the wooded area and come out of that little wooded area part. If he was standing right there and looking at Nordstrom's, it's similar to looking at the Hilton. And he could have called and said, "Hey, I'm 5 minutes away," and mistakenly thought Nordstrom's was the Hilton from where he was standing. That's the only other wooded area that he could be in, but he would have mistakenly thought it was the Hilton. So there's not many places he could be standing looking at a hotel thinking it was the Hilton, that there was wooded area. There was a wooded area. But again, it's a mystery because there's not much to go on. There's really not, even though I probably could tell you exactly where he was standing at certain times, almost up to the time he disappeared, even 5 minutes, losing 5 minutes of that, he could have walked in any direction 5 minutes.
I know that they have said that the argument was, Tyler just waking up grumpy saying that they're at the wrong place. Have you ever heard that they argued about anything else or any details about the argument other than that?
It's not something that people haven't talked about already, so it's nothing that's private. But supposedly, and this is what I read. It was posted on one of the sites that I think it was an ex-girlfriend that maybe had gotten a hold of him that night, either through text or something like that. And I don't know if that was something that started an argument, or a little bit of an argument. Don't even think. And again, I don't even think it's relevant. The only relevancy to his disappearance to anything before he left was that's why he left. If he was mad about something, whatever it was, it was irrelevant for him, other than the fact that he left. That's why he left. Then the missing part had something. It was totally something different. Anything could have made him leave that night, but the end would have been the end result would have been the same. He got lost. He couldn't find his way back, and then something happened to him.
Okay. I have to ask just because I know other people will, and honestly, if we didn't know what we knew, then I probably wouldn't feel this way. But is his ex-girlfriend contacting him really a reason for him to be mad and walk away?
Well, no, but let's say if Brittany knew and they got in an argument over it and then it escalated and let's say he thought, "Oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing," and it may have been nothing between him and her, but Brittany maybe took it the wrong way or got upset more than she should have. That could have, escalated into this big, huge argument, and then Tyler just thought, you know what, I'm walking away. I'm going to cool down, and I'll come back. And then from there, his friend tried to find him. That may have further escalated things where, according to when I talked to his friend, he said, Tyler really didn't want to talk. He was just walking. And maybe Tyler wouldn't have walked as far if he wasn't being followed. It's just little things that escalated into something big. And, something happened at 403.
Sadly, we just don't know what that is, and we've not found any answers that could help bring Tyler home, but not from lack of trying. I know that you and Lori have spent a tremendous amount of time speaking to Brittany and working on this case. Is there anything that you would like to add in here yourself, or anything that you would like to say?
I want to say that I feel bad for Brittany because people criticize everything she does and everything she did, and they went to a strip club that night, and they're criticizing them. I really don't care what they did that night. I don't care what their plans were. They were a young couple, newly married, had a child. They were just living their life and wanting to go forward with their life like everybody does. But they were very young, and she was very young, or still is very young, I should say. Yeah, a little younger than Tyler. Tyler probably had a little bit more life experience, but 23 years old for this to happen, and I think they're making too much. People are making too much of that night, what happened that night between them, or what they did or might have done or was planning to do, that have nothing to do with Tyler being missing, other than, like I said, indirectly him walking off because of an argument. I mean, people walk off from arguments all the time. They just don't disappear. So that in itself is the unfortunate circumstance, the walking away.
Well, before we go, I know other than CPD, there probably isn't anyone that has investigated Tyler's disappearance as much as you. Well, actually, I can't say that. I know Tyler's parents have hired a private investigator. I can't speak for his work. I've never spoke with him. But in your investigation, have you formed any opinions of what could have happened to Tyler or areas that should be searched for Tyler?
Well, I want to say that this is all my opinion, and just going by what I know and to the best of my ability to the best I can to help Brittany find Tyler and see what might have happened to him. I think at the end of the night, I think he was near the Hampton, and I think it was there's a Hampton Inn and Suites up. It's past Morse Road. You go up Stelzer, cross over Morse Road. There's a Hampton there. I think he was there. Probably one of the last places he was at. He walked there by mistake. I've got reasons to believe why. But again, these are all my opinion. And I think he left there, which was probably near the 5-10 minutes before he called her the last time. I think what may have happened was this. I think he probably crossed over Morse Road again, and he was either heading down Stelzer, or there's a road. There's a Seaward Street. It's Seward. But I don't think he would have went that way, because that's between two bigger stores. I think he probably headed on back down Stelzer, and then we got to get to the 403 mark where he said, I'm in the woods and I'm looking at the hotel. If you come down Stelzer and you look at an aerial map, there's a little it's like a little path through the trees. It's called Easton Loop North. It's not a road for cars. I think his GPS probably took him down the street, which was Stelzer, and he went right through this wooded area. He came out into a big field, and that's where you'll see Easton Loop East. Now, if you look at the aerial view and you put yourself pretty much down into that area on the street, and you're looking around, you're going to see a Macy's. And again, at 4 a.m, you're not going to see much. But if you look to your right a little bit, you're going to see a Nordstrom's. And when you see the Nordstrom's, there's like a steeple on top of that building, and it's very similar looking, like what the Hilton has. Now, it's possible when he walked out of that wooded area, he saw Nordstrom's from a distance. And again, I'm not sure what's lit up at that time, but it's possible he looked at that and thought, oh, there's the Hilton. You know, he lost perspective of where he was. And it's even similar looking, like when you look at Macy's to the left, it almost looks like a parking garage where you know there's like pylons holding up the top part there where you park underneath. I think he thought he was looking at the Hilton. I think there's a good possibility that he was actually looking at Nordstrom's. But you know, the sad part is if he came through that wooded area and was standing looking at Nordstrom's, directly to his right, down the road just a little bit, you can see the Hilton, and it's got a similar steeple. It's higher, but I'm not sure if it was lit up. And it's further down the road, but he was looking at Nordstrom's possibly and thinking it was the Hilton, and wasn't far away from the Hilton. If he would have just kept going down Easton Loop east, he would have ended up straight at the Hilton. So from there, we don't know what happened. That Easton Loop, it could have been a car coming by, and if you look at the aerial map, and I'm not sure if what year this map is. I know it's fairly current, and I know there's some construction going on, or there was across the street from Macy's, like on Alston Street. But you can see wooded areas, and they look kind of small on the aerial map, but they're not. They're big, and if you put a body in those areas, it could be a long time if it was an accident, if he was hit by a car, by somebody, you know, coming from whatever direction that night, whether it be from a bar and they had too much to drink and wasn't paying attention, and he wasn't. You know, maybe he was, I'll say this too, maybe when he was walking home or walking back to the Hilton, or he thought he was walking to the Hilton, maybe he was listening to something on his phone. Maybe he was listening to music. Maybe he had headphones in. Maybe he just wasn't paying attention, walked in front of a car, and, you know, the circumstances being what they were, you know, it was an accident. And they may have just, you know, panicked and did something to hide him.
I do want to talk about that the last thing that we know Tyler, or the last thing done with Tyler's phone anyways, prior to the 403 call.
As far as what Tyler was doing from, say, 353 to 403, he was asking for directions to get, again, back to the Hilton. There was, when he was standing by the Hampton, there was a road there, and the road is Transit Drive. And that road goes back behind the Hampton to a bus terminal. Now, you had said earlier, when did Tyler have his phone last? You can prove. Well, when you listen to his voice commands for Google asking for directions, that's the last one. But there was another command that wasn't recorded, and it said ask for transit directions. Now, my opinion is this. He was standing near the Hampton. Transit Drive, he could have said something about Transit Drive because he saw the sign, and Google could have thought he asked for transit directions. Now, behind there, there is a bus terminal, and, you know, one could think that, well, you know, did he hop on a bus and go somewhere? And you know, that's a theory, and maybe something that people would make them, you know, think that he did get on a bus because transit directions. But I think it's a mistake. I think it was because he was on Transit Drive that his phone mistakenly thought he asked for transit directions when he was just mentioning Transit Drive, and he still crossed over to go back the way he went, which he would have crossed over Morris on the Stelzer. You know, I think it was around 3:58. He had asked his phone to open up a YouTube video, and I know the video was a song. Okay, so if he was listening to music and he wasn't really paying attention or didn't hear a car maybe or something and was accidentally hit, and that same person was doing the person that hit him was doing the same thing, wasn't paying attention, was drinking, and it came to an accident like that and they hit the body, that's a possibility. But he was watching a video, or at least he asked to, at 3:50, I think it was 3:58. And so you figure that's what, about 5 minutes, well, yeah, 5-6 minutes or so before he called her. So actually, it seems to be that he actually watched the video and got through it because he called at 4:03. So how far could he have walked from the Hampton from 3:53 a.m. to 4:03? That's 10 minutes. Assuming he was walking back towards the Hilton, he should have almost made it back there. So if we could only assume he was walking in the right direction, we'd know how close he got. But that's the only thing I can't figure out. If it took him 10 minutes to call at 4:03, and he asked for directions back at 3:53, and while he was walking, asked to listen to a song. I wish I knew if he was walking in the right direction, because a 10-minute walk would pretty much put him very close to the Hilton. Not 5 minutes. I mean, way less than 5 minutes. So the fact that he said, "I'll be there in 5 minutes," it's hard to say where he was. I hope I'm putting this in perspective. I mean, it's kind of tough because if people don't know the area or they know the roads, but some that do. But I think I know exactly where he was at a specific time, which was about 10 minutes before he made his last call. The problem is he's not gonna walk in any direction, obviously. You know what I mean? It's not like you're gonna walk where there's roads, and you're gonna walk where where the phone may tell you at first. But even 10 minutes of walking, if you look at a map, an aerial map, and draw a circle, he could be in a lot of different places in that period of time. Now, if he got hit by a car and somebody grabbed him, then he could be anywhere, because his phone died or it went off or something, whatever, at 4:03 on the second phone call. So assuming he didn't get put in a car, you have an idea where he may be. But if he got put in a car, then who knows? And sadly, Tyler's case has kind of died down. There's not much talk about things anymore like there used to be. I mean, not just daily, but 10 times a day you would see something on your notifications that said, somebody posted on Bring Tyler Home. Then that other site, when I was a member of it, it was constant. I don't know how that one's running anymore, but people are kind of getting bored and tired, and they're, so it's kind of dying down. So I think it's a really good time to put this show out on him with new information, because it'll start, getting it known again and getting it talked about again.
Through my time spent helping missing persons and their families, I have seen and heard many things, but I've never seen and heard the things I have with Tyler's disappearance. Most of the time, when a person goes missing, the family receives initial support, whether they are guilty or not. As soon as Tyler's disappearance went public, a modern-day lynch mob was formed and began attacking Brittany and Sean just because they could in a public way. The one thing I can say about all this is Brittany has been very forthcoming in our conversations with her. Jim also stated that Brittany and Sean were both cooperative and forthcoming with him as well. In a time like this, with Tyler Davis missing, the most important thing is to bring Tyler home. We all need to work together for answers and not attack a young lady that is searching desperately for answers as to what happened to her husband. Tyler Davis is a missing adult from Columbus, Ohio. Tyler was last seen on February 24, 2019 in the Easton area. He is 29 years old and 5 foot 9 inches tall and 195 pounds. Tyler is a white male with brown hair and brown eyes. He was last seen wearing a green and blue flannel, a white t-shirt, denim jeans, and Nike shoes. If you have any information on the disappearance of Tyler Davis, please call the Columbus Police Department at 614-645-4624. Missing in Ohio now has a Patreon page. Through Patreon, you can donate as little as $2 a month. There are multiple donation tiers for you to choose from. Some that will even give you the opportunity to be a guest on an episode of Missing in Ohio. With the money that is donated, we will pay for production of this podcast, plan missing persons events, supply flyers to families with a missing loved one, and many other things to help raise awareness. If you would prefer to make a one-time donation, you can do so through our new PayPal page. The Patreon and PayPal links can be found in the show notes. Every donation will be greatly appreciated and help raise awareness for Ohio's missing loved ones. Missing in Ohio is an affiliate of Missing Person from Ohio. Missing Person from Ohio is a Facebook page ran by Lori Davis. Here's a Missing Persons news update by Lori and how Missing Person from Ohio can help you if you have a missing loved one.
Missing Person from Ohio is an outlet for those with missing loved ones where we can publicize their case. I can help ensure that they are listed on the correct organizations. I can talk to the family members about steps that they can take to try to help keep the publicity out there for their missing loved one. And I can also just work with that family to let them understand that someone cares, that we are a group of individuals that really want to help, and we're doing this for the right reasons. We're doing everything that we can to help them bring their missing loved one home. And if we're not able to bring them home, we can at least help support them during the time while they're missing.
Also, please check out Lori's new weekly Missing Person update on the Missing Person from Ohio Facebook page. If you have Lori is doing a wonderful job keeping us all updated on missing person news from around the state. missingpersonohio@gmail.com. You can also contact us through Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. All of the links can be found in the show notes. Missing in Ohio now has a tip line. If you have any information on a disappearance, please call. All calls will remain anonymous and reported to the investigating agency for the missing person. The tip hotline is 740-206-9376. Serious tips only, please. Many of you know I was previously on a podcast called Comeback, The Disappearance of Brian Schaefer. Comeback ended, but I decided to continue my investigation into Brian's disappearance. Here's a clip of our new investigative podcast, Into the Disappearance of Brian Schaefer. There are two questions that everyone asks when it comes to the disappearance of Brian Schaefer. Did he leave to start a new life, or did he meet foul play on April 1st, 2006? We are here to try to answer those questions. We are your hosts, Kelly and Jim, and this is Brian Schaefer, Dead or Alive podcast. This is an investigation into Brian's disappearance like no other. Here are some clips from our upcoming Season 1 that will be out by the end of summer.
So the one thing that I think ever since we started talking to John Hurst is that the bar was an absolute fluke. Like, it really meant nothing in his disappearance because there was a way for him to get out without being picked up on camera.
I wonder if he met with somebody. And if he did, what the hell happened?
Isla has been a great asset in helping us search for Brian.
Absolutely, she has.
We have made many connections throughout our investigation with many wonderful people, but Isla goes above and beyond to help us out. With the pictures we received of the homeless man, she even had a coworker of hers look at the pictures, and he is some form of federal facial analyst, and he said that he's not saying those pictures are Brian Schaefer, but we need to look into them more to see if it is Brian Schaefer, because there's enough similarities there where it could possibly be.
And you know, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, and here's the problem. If that darn picture was just a little bit, if the guy was looking up a little bit more, because you're losing some of the facial structure the further down you go. You're not getting a straight on, and that's just so bad, because, you know, to put it into a computer that has, you know, a face app that, you know, more advanced that they have today, facial recognition. And these, and you know, I have delved into that with I have a site that will do that, and I have done hundreds of comparisons, and it's very, very accurate. less accurate when the face it's not a straight on face shot, because you're losing those, 100 points, 200 points, whatever you're doing, to measure points of the face. If it's not a straight on face shot, a side face shot, you're never going to get anything from. But looking down, it could hurt. It could hurt the results.
Right, it could. And the one thing he did mention, and I thought was interesting, and I didn't really pay attention to, but of course I'm not trained to pay attention to that. He mentioned that the shadow cast from Brian's nose and from the homeless man's nose was exactly the same.
Now, that's something I didn't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, he said that the shadows that they cast are exactly the same.
Wow.
That is a possibility, and I think the one thing that everyone needs to realize, like you said, a phone pings and the actual ringing of the cell phone were two separate things. Like, the phone didn't ping when it was ringing on the ends of the family members and the Columbus Police Department and everyone else that was calling Brian's phone at that time. It continued to ring, and then the voicemail would kick on, but that's not when it actually pinged. And we recently found out that there was more than one ping. So the one thing I've struggled with going public with, because I didn't know if we should put it out there or not, is I have recently been paying a lot of attention to the sighting of Brian by the homeless man a few days after he went missing. It was behind a United Dairy Farmers in Columbus, and supposedly this homeless guy sees a man that he says is Brian Schaefer eating a sandwich, and he turns to who he assumes is Brian and says, "Hey man, people are looking for you." And the guy looks kind of confused, didn't pay much attention, and just turned and walked away. Well, my reasoning for paying much more attention now is because of the sightings, Jim, that we've had recently and been told about, that Brian Schaefer could be a homeless man. But one theory we haven't discussed is, could Brian Schaefer not know who he is? Could he still be out there somewhere wandering and not know that he is Brian Schaefer, and his family and friends don't know that he's out there?
I think it's very possible. And coincidentally, just yesterday, and I wasn't looking for this, there was 5 people that were presumed dead that were alive and found after years. And one of them was somebody who had no memory of who they were. And people always dismiss that. And it's not as uncommon as people think. And people think, well, how do they live, or how do they do this, how do they do that? Well, here, you still know, like we discussed before, you still know you're somebody. You still know you're hungry and you need to get shelter. It's not like you're roaming around and you don't know anything. You just don't know who you are.
The scent dogs tracking him to behind the Wendy's, and then he mentioned down the road of the dogs following the scent down the road to an abandoned factory. And I want to find out more about that.
Well, yeah, so that kind of opens things up again with as far as where did he end up. But Detective Hurst had also talked about, I guess, to recap the Wendy's situation. So he thought maybe he came out the side door where the band was, or maybe the door across from Wendy's, the construction door, which he mentioned was big enough for me or him to fit through, which is easily big enough for Brian to fit through. And he walked across the street and went to Wendy's parking lot, and that's where they lost his trail. He said that there was cameras that only had a picture of the window, the drive-through window or whatever. So they weren't able to see if he got in a car. And it makes me wonder, is there any kind of connection? And I'm not saying even with the same person, but Brian was in a very populated area, and that's what is sets him above and beyond what, like, Mara Murray, she was on a deserted road. Tyler was supposedly in the woods, and he was walking around by himself. But Brian wasn't. Brian was in a popular area. But I think to tell everybody, the last thing you want to do in Columbus, and also I'll throw Pittsburgh in there because they seem to be just as bad. You don't want to be by yourself, drunk at night on the streets anywhere of these cities. Yeah, exactly. And most people think that, and I'm not saying they're wrong for thinking this, but they think that everybody that went up the escalator came down the escalator. It's just that they were seen leaving the building, not necessarily the escalator, but maybe the side entrance where the band, came and went.
I want to have ironclad proof in my hand, and not just in someone else's hand. But there are numerous reasons why he could have taken a ride from someone that night, and it's very possible that he did. And I've always said, to miss all of the other cameras
right
in Columbus, that he had to have been in a vehicle.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of Brian Schaefer, Dead or Alive. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and
Missing in
Instagram
Ohio
for
will also
updates
be
on the
doing
release
something
of
new for
Season 1
Season 3.
of Brian Schaefer,
We are
Dead or
currently
Alive
looking
podcast.
for case suggestions of missing persons from Ohio. After we have looked into all of the suggestions, we will select 1 to 2 missing persons and feature them during a whole season. Missing in Ohio will use all of our resources to do a deep investigation into the disappearance, hopefully where we will uncover new information. Please send all of your case suggestions to us on the Missing in Ohio Facebook page. You can find Missing in Ohio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Discuss all the cases you hear on Missing in Ohio on the Missing in Ohio podcast group page on Facebook. You can listen to Missing in Ohio on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, and many of the other podcast sites you enjoy. If you like Missing in Ohio and the awareness we are raising, please leave us a review and give us 5 stars on whatever listening platform you enjoy. Thank you for listening to Missing in Ohio, Chapter 11, The Disappearance of Tyler Davis. Tune in next time for Missing in Ohio, Chapter 12.